everyone, a very good evening and a very warm welcome to the session. I hope you guys are doing absolutely fine and amazingly well. Sorry for the delay. I think that's the first thing that I want to prioritize and apologize for. My previous session again got extended by almost 10 minutes, and that's why we got delayed by in beginning this session. But no worries, आज का topic जो है नया chapter शुरू हो रहा है, which is food security in India. And today we're going to get introduced to food security. What does it mean? What are its various features? How do you ensure it? So let's get started. Let me quickly introduce myself. As you can see, this is me and my name is Ankana. Hi everyone. I am your expert for social sciences at Embibe and have been associated with the field of education for more than 9 years, wherein I've had the wonderful opportunity to interact and teach the students of both CBSE and ICSE online and offline. And I've done my studies in the field of humanities, because of which I specialize in English and social sciences. Now that I've introduced myself, let's also talk about the chapter. Chapter बच्चे इन topics में हम majorly divide कर सकते हैं. Chapter है हमारा food security in India. First of all, introduction to the food security and how do we ensure food security. Now it may seem like a broad, very small 2 topics, but इसमें बहुत सारे elements हैं. For example, food security in India में we will understand how do we ensure it. And what are the various schemes, what are the challenges, ये सब कुछ करने वाले हैं हम. आज का टॉपिक हालांकि इंट्रोडक्शन है. कॉन्सेप्ट्स की अगर बात करें तो हम फूड सिक्योरिटी का मतलब समझेंगे, उसके अलग अलग डायमेंशंस, अलग अलग आप समझ सकते हो कि क्लास अलग अलग फीचर्स, कैसे पैरामीटर्स क्या इंश्योर करता है, ये सारी चीज़ों को समझेंगे. ठीक है. Then we'll talk about why do we need food security, what is the famine, and we'll understand Bengal famine of 1943, which was a great learning lesson, because of which events like these we actually focus a lot on food security. तो हम ये भी समझेंगे कि जब when we talk about why do we need the food security, you need to have examples to understand that okay, it was not there at one point, now it is there, why is it required, right? So let's get started. Arjun, who is a young boy from a village, witnessed his family struggle to get food. अर्जुन ने देखा कि उसके परिवार को खाना मिलने में बहुत ज़्यादा दिक्कत हो रही थी. ठीक है. And from his experience, he understood and discovered that food security means ensuring consistent access to nutritious food for everyone. I'm not going to dwell a lot in this because food security हम detail में वैसे भी discuss करने वाले हैं. His story highlights the importance and urgency of achieving food security for a better future. So अर्जुन की कहानी से हमें समझ आता है कि food security का मतलब है not having food available. So if you ensure that the food is available, that is securing the food. That is what food security means in the shortest way possible. सबसे सिंपल तरीके से अगर बोला जाए तो खाना अवेलेबल रहे हमेशा हर किसी के लिए जो उनकी ज़रूरतों को पूरा करे, इसको सिक्योर करना ही फूड सिक्योरिटी होती है. तो इससे उसे समझ आता है कि क्यों ये इतना इम्पोर्टेंट है. अर्जुन की कहानी से हमें समझ आता है कि देयर आर फैमिलीज विच आर स्ट्रगलिंग टू फाइंड फूड. हाउ डू वी इंश्योर कि उनके लिए खाना अवेलेबल है. इसकी इम्पोर्टेंस पे, इसकी इंश्योरिटी पे और फूड सिक्योरिटी पे हम और डिटेल में बात करेंगे. सो लेट्स गेट स्टार्टेड एंड अंडरस्टैंड द मीनिंग ऑफ द वेरी टर्म फूड सिक्योरिटी. बट बिफोर आई डू, काफ़ी देर से बक 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 कर रही हूँ मैं, बहुत देर से बहुत कुछ बोल दिया है मैंने. So let me take a quick pause and say hi to all my dear lovely students who are over here. Right? Hi, Sugu Yashashwani. How are you, bache? Who else do we have in the session? I think I saw Rhythm's name. So good evening. Welcome to the session. Hi, Mr. Kef, editor. I'm absolutely fine. How are you? आप कैसे हो? Good evening and welcome to the session. Who else do we have over here? जल्दी से hi बोल दीजिए. Also guys, please share the link of the session with your friends. Let them know that I am live so that they can come and join the session. This is the very first session of our chapter of food security in India. Over a period of 4 sessions हम इसे finish करने वाले हैं. इस chapter पे हम 4 sessions dedicate करेंगे और ये काफ़ी important chapter है. ये एक ऐसा chapter भी है जो कई समय से हमारे एग्जाम में नहीं आ रहा था, सिलेबस में इंक्लूडेड नहीं था. ठीक है. हाय राधिका, हाय साइतन में MR, गुड इवनिंग. सो दिस इज ऑल्सो अ चैप्टर विच वॉज नॉट इंक्लूडेड फॉर अ लॉन्ग पीरियड ऑफ टाइम इन आवर सिलेबस. सो you may not find a lot of videos or resources on it. It has only been included, I think, last year. So we are going to dwell into this, and this is in fact a very important chapter, not just from the perspective of examination or what is there in the syllabus. सिर्फ ये सोच के कि एग्जाम के लिए ज़रूरी है. नो, इट्स इम्पॉर्टेंट फॉर अस टू बी अवेयर अबाउट दिस एज अ सिटीजन ऑफ इंडिया. इट माइट कम हैंडी फॉर अस for personal use or to help somebody. So this is something that we need to know कि खाना, food, which is the most important necessity of life. ठीक है, food, clothes, shelter, ये तीन चीजें, these three things are always a necessity of life. This is what is an absolute compulsion to have. How do we ensure this? How do we secure this? That is what this chapter is going to teach us. So it's very, very important. शुरू करते हैं. Radhika, Tanmay, right? Ready to get started? I think everyone has said hi, mostly. If you have not, please go ahead and write it so that I can say hi back at you. Drushti, hi, welcome to this session. So, bachi, food security. First of all, as I told you, as we started, right? Roti, kapda aur makan in Hindi, or food, shelter, clothes in English. No matter what language we say it in, these will, the truth, the fact will not change that this is the necessity of life. You cannot survive, you cannot live as a human if you don't eat. You cannot survive or live if you don't have clothes on your body, and unless you're staying probably in a forest, and still you need to cover your body because you'll be exposed to the sun, to the cold, and a lot of things, and you need a shelter. You cannot just be homeless, right? The life will become very difficult, and that is why these are known as necessities of lives, right? Bache, I always, for 9th, 6th to 10th, the classes that I take refer to NCERT for CBSE board classes. NCERT is what I always stick to because CBSE always asks questions from NCERT. तो एशान मैं नहीं यूज़ करती हूँ, मैं NCERT से ही आपके सेशन के टॉपिक्स का डिस्कशन करती हूँ based on the rationalized syllabus, which is the latest syllabus that has been given by CBSE. ठीक है? So one thing is very, very clear to us, that food is very, very important. Now, food is not just important to keep us, alive. Food gives you energy. With that energy, you're able to study, work, whatever task as per your age you're supposed to perform. You perform is because you perform it, you're able to perform it because you consume food. So food becomes a necessity for living, for development, for a healthy survival. ठीक है, तो survival के लिए ज़रूरी है, healthy survival के लिए ज़रूरी है, हर एक चीज़ के लिए खाना एक necessity बन जाता है. So what does food security means? Food security in the shortest way possible, if I have to tell you, is ensuring that you're having healthy, or even if not healthy necessarily, but nutritious food. But every body has a certain requirement. We require the vitamins, the minerals, the energy resources through food in a certain amount. If we don't get that in the way we are supposed to, we will start falling sick. We will not be able to fight a lot of diseases. We will start developing a lot of deficiencies. बहुत तरह की problems हमारे साथ होने लग जाती हैं. So food, खाना सिर्फ enough नहीं है. Otherwise, I can just keep eating chapatis. Let's say somebody gave me a lot of wheat and I can just keep eating chapatis, but even that will cause a lot of problem because I need to have fiber, I need to have certain vitamins, certain minerals. So basically, proper, balanced, nutritious food in order to be healthy, not fall sick, be strong, have a strong immune system. राइट अच्छे से जीने के लिए ये बहुत ज़्यादा ज़रूरी होता है. Okay, Vedan, thank you so much for informing me. I'll probably look at that session later. So, बच्चे, फूड सिक्योरिटी का मतलब बस यही होता है. सिक्योरिटी का मतलब क्या होता है? किसी चीज़ को सिक्योर करना, इंश्योर करना, प्रोटेक्ट करना. Right? So, when you're providing food security, what we're trying to say is that we are trying to basically ensure that people have the food available for them at least twice a day, and nutritious food, not just something or anything to fill the stomach. So, food security is ensuring that people get more than 2 square meals in a nutritious manner. ठीक है? जहाँ पे लोग हर वक्त physical, social और economic access की बात करते हैं to sufficient, safe and nutritious food. So food which is not poisoned, food which does not have chemicals which will ultimately kill you. The food has to be safe. The food has to be sufficient. As I told you, I need 3 chapatis to be healthy, but I only get 1. So that doesn't mean that I'm secured food-wise. I'm just getting 1 every day, not as a choice, but as a compulsion. मजबूरी में एक ही रोटी खा रही हूँ. ऐसा नहीं है कि चूज कर रही हूँ कि डाइट करना और एक रोटी खा रही हूँ. तो ये क्या हो रहा है? It is not sufficient for me. Plus, I'm having a food which is poisonous. It has a lot of chemical. It's discarded by other people. So I end up eating it because I don't have food otherwise. No, it has to be safe. And it has to be nutritious. It has to help me build my health. Otherwise, food security नहीं हो रही है हासिल. समझ रहे हो आप? ठीक है. Okay, talking about food security, yes, that's why, Vedan, if you listen to me in the beginning when I tell that I specialize in 2 subjects, it's English and social science, because I was actually an English teacher. Now, eventually I moved to social science. So yes, there was a point where I used to teach both, and it was a difficult time to manage both subjects together. Talking about food security ensure करता है. It makes sure, what is the idea of food security? That everyone has food at all the times. Okay, whenever they need food, they have access to the food, but at an affordable rate. Okay, let's say there is a market. Market mein food is always available. In the market, the food is always available. I can go and whenever buy it. But what if it is very, very expensive? So even if I live right in the market, I have a shop right in front of me, but the food that is being sold there is very expensive. I cannot buy it. अगर मैं उस खाने को खरीद ही नहीं सकती हूँ, then how am I secured food wise? I am not, right? So food has to be available, it has to be accessible, people should be able to reach it, and people should be able to afford it, people should be able to buy it. ऐसे पैसों में मिलना चाहिए, इतने वैल्यू में मिलना चाहिए कि लोग खरीद सके. अब again, let's say the food is being sold at an affordable rate. ठीक है, ऐसे रेट में मिल रहा है कि बहुत affordable है. But then again what happens? It is being sold maybe in a village, maybe in the forest where I cannot go. It's not accessible for me. Then what is the use? So all of these factors, all of these words are key terms. Accessible, affordable, all times, whenever needed. Today I find it after 3, and then next 3 months I don't find the food. After 3 months I'll find the food. I'll die in 3 months, right? Now it hinges on the system like, okay, we'll come to this next. Let's move to this. Vulnerable households suffer most during food production and distribution issues. Bache, you have seen problems like cheap price, best quality, absolutely Saitan mein hai na? And Yashika, welcome to the session. No worries, आपने join कर लिया, वही बहुत बड़ी बात है. Miss नहीं होना चाहिए. Whatever portion you have missed, you can go back and watch the recording. Now, bache, vulnerable household, what do you mean by vulnerable? Vulnerable means people who are higher at risk. Right? They are more exposed to the risk of being in danger in cases of challenged situations. Challenged situations mean some disaster, some famine, drought, whatever. कोई भी difficult situation like COVID era. ये सारे situation में people who are more at risk of getting harmed, getting affected or impacted by the situation at the max are the vulnerable people. They are always at the risk. They are always high at exposure. So there are a lot of households. कई सारे ऐसे घर बार हैं, कई सारे ऐसे परिवार हैं. A lot of people who are poor, who do not have the money. For them, it is always a challenge to get food and get food at time of good quality in affordable prices, right? With them, it becomes, the problem grows even more when there is a problem with food production. For example, मान लो crop failure happens. If crop failure happens, in this case, what will happen? The prices of the crop will increase tremendously. बहुत ज़्यादा price जो है भाग जाएगा, एकदम से महंगी हो जाएंगी चीज़ें. For example, onion, lemon. If you guys remember, last year or almost 1.5 years back, not last year, 1.5 years back, exactly when the Ukraine-Russia war had started, the fuel prices had spiked up. And lemon cultivation was not happening in adequate amount. नींबू जितने grow करने चाहिए थे नहीं grow कर रहे थे. Transportation charges had increased because the fuel charges had increased because of the war that was going on. For all of these reasons, lemon was being sold 500 rupees per kg. Now in such a scenario, imagine, will a poor person be able to buy lemon? A lot of times we have seen it happening with different items. Tomatoes sometimes onions would be 150 rupees kg, 200 rupees kg, right? In such times, how are these people going to buy this? So the vulnerable people get affected in situations like these, when war, when some crop failure or something like that is happening and prices are going very, very high up. So they are very much dependent on the public distribution system. What do you mean by public distribution system? Distribute karna, it's a system which distributes. What does it distribute? It distributes food. Who is distributing it? Public distribution system mein, who is distributing it? because it is for the public, so naturally it has to be the government. Okay, so the government takes care of making the food accessible at affordable prices at all times for people. But when there is a shortage, whenever there is a problem, naturally they are always dependent on them and they will also suffer, right? So it completely hinges. What do you mean by hinges? Depends. It hangs on. It depends on. It is very, very dependent on the public distribution system and government action. How the government handles this situation. In a situation like this, where the food prices are very high, people of vulnerable household or the people or the residents of a country will be dependent on the system of food distribution which is organized by the government, what their actions are. And government vigilance, which is how they monitor. Okay, government monitoring we are talking about over here. Okay, and interventions are crucial during the threats to food security. So whenever people are not getting food, government plays the most important role. When we talk about the Bengal famine, you will see that how the government did not take a proper step because it was the British rule at that time and so many people died. Had the government dealt with that Bengal famine properly, this problem would not have happened. So proper monitoring, continuous monitoring, collective responsibility where everyone comes together, takes the responsibility of ensuring that people are getting food, सबको खाना मिल रहा है, सबका पेट भर रहा है, सब सर्वाइव कर पा रहे हैं, is the most important thing to maintain food security. Food security ensure करने के लिए सबसे ज़रूरी होता है. Now talking about the dimensions, the features of food security, affordability, accessibility, availability. ये तीन सिंपल सी चीज़ है. खाना सही दाम पे मिलना चाहिए, खाना लोगों के लिए एक्सेसिबल होना चाहिए और खाना अवेलेबल होना चाहिए. सही दाम पे मिल रहा है, खाना अवेलेबल ही नहीं है. सही दाम पे मिल रहा है, अफोर्डेबल है, बट मैं पहुंच ही नहीं सकती खाना तक. It's not accessible. All of these are important parameters and features which is very, very necessary, which is very, very essential for food security. अगर food security ensure करना है तो ये तीनों चीज़ों का होना बहुत ज़रूरी है. So on that note, let's quickly answer this quiz question. Food security ensures everyone has access to dash food at all times. What does food security mean? What do you mean by food security? And guys, dimensions आपको ज़रूर याद रखना है. What are the various dimensions? It's very, very important that it should be accessible, affordable and available. Okay, people. So we have Radhika, Yashashwini, Sahi Tanmay, Tushant who have answered absolutely correct in perfect timing. Wonderful. Tanmay has also taken an attempt and has answered the question correct in actually very fast for that matter. Drushti, Rhythm, Shrivali and Nagraj. I'm waiting for you guys to answer the question. Fatafat jaiye, answer kar dijiye. Food security ensures everyone has access to dash food at all times. So availability, all times, afford access is the second factor. Third factor क्या रह जाता है? Affordability. सही prices पे available होना बहुत ज़रूरी है. हाँ, I realized कि मैंने ना गलती से 3 dimensions बता दिए और question उसी के बारे में था. ठीक है, granaries क्या होते हैं? यशस्विनी, are you asking that? I will tell you. Granaries are basically storehouses of grains. ठीक है, storehouses of grains को granaries बोलते हैं. That is why UP, Punjab, Haryana are also known as granaries because a lot of cultivation happens here. They're like storehouses of grains. Now, अब हर एक dimension को detail में समझते हैं. Availability का क्या मतलब है? That there is enough food for everybody's need, right? So, food production within the country is what is availability of food. Now, guys, let's say there are, oh, you remember French Revolution? French Revolution याद है? French Revolution का immediate cause क्या था? What was the immediate cause of French Revolution? Who will tell me? बड़ा सिंपल सवाल कर दिया मैंने. इसके बाद आप ये अवेलेबिलिटी तो ऐसे समझ जाओगे. You will be able to understand just like that what does availability of food mean and why it is so important. What was the immediate cause of French Revolution? You remember, but you have to tell me. Sai Tanmay, I understand that you remember, but tell me, subsistence crisis, what do you mean by subsistence crisis? Why did the subsistence crisis happen? French Revolution में subsistence crisis क्यों हुआ था? What was the cause behind it? What led to the situation of subsistence crisis in French Revolution? Bread prices were high. Why? Food failure had happened, which means scarcity of food had happened. समझ रहे हो? खाना खत्म हो गया था, इसलिए सरकार गिर गई, राजा को एग्जीक्यूट कर दिया गया. You understand the power of food, you guys? Crops basically did not grow. है ना तन्मय? What had happened? Crop failure had happened. So the amount of food which was needed to feed the entire population was not enough. Food was available but not for everyone, which means availability of food is very important. जितने लोग हैं उतना खाना होना और उससे ज़्यादा होना बहुत ज़रूरी होता है. If food is less and people are more, it will always lead to a crisis. That is what we mean by availability of food. That the production always has to be on point, the production always has to be high within the country in order to make sure that all people have food available for them. Is it clear? Availability of food is clear from French Revolution example. So one thing we have understood, when the food is available, then what is happening? The demand of the food is equal to the supply of the food, right? There is enough supply as per the demand. So the price will also be maintained. Price भी क्या रहेगा? Maintained रहेगा. Price will also be maintained. That we have to remember from the example of French Revolution. Remember this point, we will need it in 2 minutes when we read the next dimension. Okay, so food production within the country is very important. We need to produce the food enough to meet the demand of the entire nation. So import of food should be done. But what are we trying to say over here? If the food production is less, if you do not have enough for your entire nation, then you should be importing food. Importing food means buying food from another nation. But ensure, what is the purpose behind this? क्यों खरीदना चाहिए दूसरे लोगों से खाना? To make sure that food is always available. Availability of food को ensure करने के लिए, to make sure that the amount of food required for the population demand is always there. Previous year stock stored in government granaries is an example. Granaries का मतलब क्या होता है? Storehouses. So बच्चे, government also has storehouses of grains, which is known as granaries, where they basically keep a stock. Stock क्या होता है? Reserve. Stock is what? Reserve. So whenever food production is done in a country, country saves some amount of food as a buffer, okay, as a reserve quantity, so that whenever there is a shortage, they can always take it out from here. For example, हम क्या करते हैं घर में? घर में if your mom is using salt, she would have a jar where she has stored the salt, but she'll have one extra packet in the cupboard also. So that the moment the salt gets over, she doesn't have to go to the market necessarily when it is immediately required. She has one in reserve. Or the same thing is done with the cylinders of gases that we use for stoves or for the purpose of cooking. You do not always have just one cylinder that you are using. You have one as a reserve also. So that while cooking, if it gets over, you can always replace it. Which means having something extra so that whenever there is a shortage, जब भी कमी पड़े आप वो एक्स्ट्रा वाली चीज का इस्तेमाल कर सको. ये स्टॉक होता है, उसको स्टॉक में रखना, एक्स्ट्रा रिजर्व में रखना, राइट? But ma'am, the prices of imported food may be more. What about that? So on my, not necessarily. It's not always necessary that if you're importing the food, it will be very, very expensive. It may be a little higher, but it can still be affordable. Okay? The point is, you have to take a call on that note. If you, in next year, you'll read a chapter called Making of a Global World. There you will see that Britain, there was a point where they stopped actually producing any food because it was cheaper for them to buy from another country than to produce it themselves. So it depends what you are importing, where you are importing from. There can be cheaper, affordable options also. It may not always be expensive. It may be higher. For example, if you can get something by producing in your nation for 8 rupees, maybe you're getting it for 10 or 11 rupees. Okay, this is done. This is okay. This can be managed. But of course, if this 8 becomes 25 rupees, then that is not the best idea. ठीक है, तो अवेलेबिलिटी ऑफ फूड हम देख रहे हैं गवर्नमेंट कैसे इंश्योर कर रही है. दे आर ऑल्सो स्टोरिंग सम ग्रेन्स विच इज एक्स्ट्रा प्रोड्यूस्ड एवरी ईयर, so that whenever there is a shortage, whenever the amount required is not being produced, they can use it from the stock. Next comes accessibility. Accessibility क्या है? It has to be in reach of every person. You have to sell it in a place where people can buy it from. Accessible होना चाहिए ना यार. मैं दूसरे देश में रख के आ जाऊं और आपको जा करके या फिर मान लो जंगल में रख के आ जाऊं, क्या फायदा? हाँ, आप वहां पहुंच ही नहीं पाओगे. यू वोंट बी एबल टू एक्सेस द फूड. फायदा थोड़ी है उससे, उससे और दिक्कत हो जाएगी. इट विल बी फर्दर प्रॉब्लम. ठीक है, विल गेट बैक टू दिस यू गाइज. लेट्स फर्स्ट फिनिश द डायमेंशंस ऑफ द फूड सिक्योरिटी. नेक्स्ट वन इज अफोर्डेबिलिटी. अरे द प्राइस हैज टू बी करेक्ट. यहाँ पे भी फ्रेंच रिवोल्यूशन का एग्जाम्पल है. ब्रेड वॉज अवेलेबल, it was in shortage, but it doesn't mean that it was not there at all. There was a lot of food available to feed a lot of families. Few families would have suffered, but still a lot of them could have fed themselves. But what was the problem? It was so expensive that despite of the bread being available for a lot of people, they were still not able to buy it. So just having food available is not enough. Availability and accessibility is not enough. It should also come at a price that people are able to afford it and buy it and support themselves, right? So enough money should be with the people to buy it, first of all. Enough money for safe and nutritious food. सिर्फ खाना खरीद पा रहे, कुछ भी खरीद रहे, ये नहीं. इतना कि अच्छा खाना हो और सपोर्ट करे, न्यूट्रिशियस फूड मिले. enough food to meet everyone's dietary needs. Second, ये अवेलेबिलिटी की बात हो रही है कि भैया खाना भी तो इतना अवेलेबल हो कि लोग उस नीड को, उस रिक्वायरमेंट को मीट कर पा रहे हैं. ठीक है. नाउ गाइस, व्हाई डू वी नीड फूड सिक्योरिटी? सिक्योरिटी है वो, गलती से डी लिखा गया है वहां पे. ठीक है, क्यों चाहिए हमें फूड सिक्योरिटी? क्यों जरूरी है? व्हाई डू वी नीड टू हैव फूड सिक्योरिटी? ये पूछने की बात नहीं है यार, नहीं तो रिवोल्यूशन हो जाएगा. फ्रेंच रिवोल्यूशन जैसा सिचुएशन हो जाएगा. गवर्नमेंट सरकारें गिर जाएंगी, कॉन्फ्लिक्ट्स हो जाएगा, राइट्स होंगे, लोग एक दूसरों की जान लेंगे. फूड इज अ नेसेसिटी. It can turn humans into animals. It's just simple as that. Why you require food? To survive. So food has to be available. So food has to be secured. But if you have to write an answer, अब जवाब तो लिखना पड़ेगा. You can't go and write that ma'am has said that food shortage will turn us into animals. We will start killing each other. That is why. So if you get a question, these are the points that you're supposed to write. ठीक है? Why do we need to ensure that we have extra food all the time? The question over here is, what are the problems and challenges that can come in future which we want to avoid, and hence always have some reserve food to provide for our population? First, weather patterns can change. ठीक है, weather patterns से दो effect होते हैं, दो primary effect होंगी. First, food production directly can get affected. Right? And if food production gets affected, you will not have enough food produced for the requirement of the citizens. Second, it can also lead to disasters. And disaster is an extreme situation where any which ways getting food available is very, very difficult and more challenging. So weather can always change. So we need to be prepared with extra food all the time, right? Second, poverty and inequality. We know a lot of people are suffering with poverty. When we were reading poverty as a challenge, guys, what did you read? What % of population of India is below the poverty line? वो कौन से लोग हैं जो दो वक्त का खाना भी मैनेज नहीं कर पाते हैं इंडिया में? What is the percentage? Do you remember? Percentage of people below the poverty line in India. Who will tell me? It's very important to remember for the second point. Guys, % of people below the poverty line in India. Anyone? नहीं याद है, भूल गए? अभी तो किया था यार चैप्टर कुछ ही दिन पहले हमने. गेस तो करो. एक नंबर ही तो लिखना है, हो सकता है तुक्का सही लग जाए, इट माइट बी राइट. दृष्टि, एनी आइडिया? यशस्विनी, रिदम? No, 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 no. Radhika, below poverty line. Poor people maybe, people who are still struggling maybe up to 50%, but below poverty line क्या है? 50% is a very big number. 40% is also a big number. थोड़ा कम है, कम है. Okay, 20%, 22%. Wonderful, that's closer. So around 10 to 12% of our population is below the poverty line. But for 1.4 billion of population, even 10% is a lot. बीपीएल बोल रहे हो यार, गरीबी नहीं बोल रहे हो, बिलो पॉवर्टी लाइन बोल रहे हो. मतलब जिनके पास घर नहीं है, जिनके पास पीने का पानी नहीं है, पहनने के लिए कपड़े नहीं है, खाने के लिए खाना नहीं है, दैट हैज टू बी स्मॉल नंबर, राइट? सो इट्स अराउंड 12%. ओके, 10 to 12%. सो लेटेस्ट डेटा यही कहता है कि 10 point some percent, like around 12% is the population which is below poverty line. Now guys, for these people we have to ensure, the government has to take care that they are making the food accessible and affordable for them. इन लोगों तक खाना पहुंचाना, क्योंकि 1.4 बिलियन पॉपुलेशन के लिए अगर आप खाना नहीं पहुंचाओगे वो कैसे सर्वाइव करेंगे? So for them to be able to have their hands on the food, ठीक है? Then again, war, political instability, any such kind of situation where food production, food distribution or any emergency situation is created, or everything, transportation, accessibility will get affected. So you need to have food always in store to provide to your citizens. Infrastructure and transportation. What if the roads all of a sudden break down? Or there's a transportation strike that goes on for 2 years. ठीक है, या ऐसा कुछ भी प्रॉब्लम आता है, any such unseen for circumstances occur, then what will happen? We will always have food in our store. फूड वेस्ट एंड लॉसेस को इंश्योर करने के लिए, लॉट ऑफ टाइम्स वी नो फूड इज बीइंग लॉस्ट, ऐसे सारे प्रॉब्लम होते हैं. ओवर कंजम्पशन. व्हाट इफ पॉपुलेशन इंक्रीजेस ऑल ऑफ अ सडन लाइक फ्रांस? वैसा हो गया तो हम क्या करेंगे? वी कैन नॉट हैव सबसिस्टेंस क्राइसिस नॉकिंग एट आवर डोर्स. वी विल यूज द स्टोर्ड फूड टू फीड द पॉपुलेशन एंड स्लोली increase our production, right? So over consumption, population increase, population growth, urbanization, ऐसी problems हो जाए तो, natural disaster हो जाए तो, in all of these situations we don't want to fall a prey, we don't want to become a victim of the situation where we become absolutely helpless कि हमारे पास भैया उपाय ही नहीं बचा है कुछ करने के लिए. We have no alternative, we have no food, people will start fighting, conflicts happening, riots happening. In order to avoid all of these things, it's best to have proper grains stored as a backup that can feed your population for 2 years, 3 years, and in this 2-3 years you can figure out a way to produce more grains to supply to your citizens. That is why you need food security, right? Now on that note, Amartya Sen said something about a term called entitlements. What is this entitlement? क्या होता है, क्या मतलब है इसका? 1970s में जो definition थी, ठीक है, urbanization बच्चे, setting up of cities. When cities set up, what happens? Cities में a lot of population explosion happens. A lot of people all of a sudden move in certain cities. So it's not like food shortage can only happen because actually the food is not there. But a population all of a sudden, even in a particular area, if it grows suddenly, how will you deal with that? Let's say a lot of people have started moving in the past 2-3 years, 5 years to Bangalore. The population has, it's like every day 3 lakh people are moving into Bangalore. Can you imagine? It's something like that. So population is exploding over here. Now the Karnataka government has ensured the provision of supplying food in general, but it is based on the population that was existing. But in next 3 years, the amount of food that they were providing, they would need 1.5 times of it. Then shortage can happen. So they need to have a stock in order to supply it, because all of a sudden, how will they make sure that they need 50% of what they were consuming, more 50% of that whole amount, right? Urbanization se bhi ye problem ho sakti hai. So 1970s mein, what was the definition of food security? It was defined as the constant availability of essential food stuff. UN के हिसाब से 1975 में it was, food is everywhere around, it is available for you, the nutritious food, the important food, all the time. Okay. Amartya Sen का contribution क्या है? Introduce the concept of access to food through entitlements. So just food being available is not the point. Is it affordable? Can I access it? I can see the food, I can see avocados kept over there. It's very nutritious. I can't buy it. It's very expensive. I don't earn enough. Then it's not accessible for me. It's not affordable for me. Food is available, but not for me. I become an exception and people like me are plenty. मेरे जैसे बहुत सारे लोग होंगे. ऐसे सिचुएशन में क्या करेंगे? So Amartya Sen added this very important dimension of access to the food through entitlements. ठीक है? What do you mean by entitlements? It is basically a combination of production, market exchange and socially provided supplies for access to the food. So he spoke that how is the exchange happening about? How is it available to all the social classes? Is it being produced? What are the food that is being produced? And that is how we realize that availability is not the only point. Access is also very, very important. Access is also a very important factor over here, right? So 1995 May, a World Food Summit happened and it gave a declaration. That is where the expansion of this term happened. This food security was now no more limited to just availability, but we expanded our definition. We understood that food security cannot just talk about food being available. सिर्फ खाना available होना काफ़ी नहीं है, उसके साथ कुछ और चीज़ों का हमें ध्यान रखना होगा. We have to understand that food security exists when everyone has the physical and economical access to sufficient food, where I can physically reach to the food and I have the money, which means access and affordability. Economic access is affordability in short, to sufficient, safe and nutritious food. So what food are you talking about? Let's say there is enough pasta everywhere. Is that good for me? Is it nutritious for me? Or maybe it has a lot of chemicals. Then does that mean that I'm secured by the food? It doesn't mean that, right? So that is what the Food Summit in 1996 basically said. Acknowledged poverty eradication as crucial for improving food access. That we need to take care of the poor people. गरीबी भी कम करनी है, पावर्टी भी कम करनी है, लोगों तक खाना भी पहुंचाना है. All of that was then taken into account and that is how we have reached the new definition which earlier did not used to exist in the 1970s, right? चलो अब फटाफट से इसी बात पे इस क्वेश्चन का कर देंगे आंसर. क्वेश्चन कह रहा है wars, political instability and conflicts can disrupt food production and distribution systems, causing food shortages and malnutrition in the people. Is this statement true or is this statement false? Okay guys, let's quickly look at your responses. So we have Radhika, Rhythm, Yashashwini, Sai Tanmay, Tushant have answered absolutely correct in perfect timing. Good job. तन्मय ने भी सही जवाब दिया है, सही और काफी जल्दी. श्रीवल्ली and Nagraj have also answered correctly. Wonderful. Drushti, have you not answered? The statement is absolutely true. ये statement क्या है? True है. ठीक है? चलो. Now moving on and talking about famine. Famine क्या होता है? ये तो आपको पता होगा. Famine का मतलब क्या होता है? What leads to a famine? What is meant by famine? Have you read about famine, you guys? A lot of times people get it confused with, how do I say, droughts. सूखा पड़ने से कई बार हम famine को confuse कर लेते हैं. But what does famine exactly mean? Any idea to you guys? क्योंकि we are now going to do a case study of shortage of food. nahi pata? Chalo, koi nahi. No worries, we'll learn now. Learning moment for us. What does a famine mean? It basically means a very adverse, extreme condition which bhookhe marna Tanmay, absolutely correct. An extreme condition, an adverse condition where extreme scarcity of food happens. यानी कि खाने के लाले पड़ने लग जाते हैं, खाना बिल्कुल खत्म हो जाता है, लोगों तक खाना नहीं पहुंच पाता है. Naturally, when extreme scarcity, adverse situation of that will happen, it is known as famine. It will lead to deaths, it will lead to malnutrition, it will lead to a lot of illness, right? Okay, mine, it is characteristics by widespread that due to hunger. Widespread of hunger, right? So, famine involves widespread deaths from starvation, which means people do not have food, they are hungry, right? And epidemics. So, naturally, bache, when people are very, very hungry, it will lead to a lot of deaths. People will be dying of being, starving to death. Epidemics, because they will be falling sick. Of course, due to the shortage of food, but otherwise also it can be an epidemic where people are just sick and falling, and are dying, resulting from consumption of contaminated water or spoiled food. So, this is food related. Jaise cholera, if I am not wrong, happens from food. I am not 100% sure. But the point is, where food is the reason behind the scarcity and the deaths. So, what will happen? या तो खराब खाना खा लिया, either you have consumed poisonous or contaminated food or water which will lead to sickness and a lot of people will die, or you're not getting any food at all, because of that a lot of people are die. Such cases is known as famine, and when the food is contaminated, water is contaminated, you cannot consume it. So there is a series which was launched just few days back, I think it's called Kala Pani. Okay? It shows a condition where the water gets contaminated in the area of Andaman and Nicobar Islands and results in death of a lot of people. What is happening? That is a famine, right? That is a situation where the water is scarce, people do not have access to the water, and of course a lot of deaths are happening because of the consumption of that water. So it leads to a loss of body resistance due to weakening caused by starvation. If you're very weak, you're very susceptible to diseases. आप आराम से बीमारी कैच कर लोगे अगर आप strong नहीं हो तो, right? And hence individuals will be very, very prone to illness. कोई भी problem भी हो सकती है. So food is the root cause. तो यहाँ पे हम बंगाल famine की बात करते हैं. 1943 की बात है, which is just 4 years before our independence. It is one of the most devastating historical famines of India. यानी कि एक ऐसा इवेंट जो हमारे हिस्ट्री में पहले कभी नहीं हुआ था, ठीक है. सेम थिंग हैपेंड इन फ्रेंच रिवॉल्यूशन. नॉट, आई मीन, इट वाज नॉट अ famine per se. Tanmay, right? But it was scarcity of food, but not to that extent where it changed into a famine, right? So, bache, famine is when food is not available at all. It will start looking like this. People will start really, being very sick, absolutely hungry and starving. So, lot of, so anyways, coming back to Bengal. So, 1943 basically means British rule chal raha hai. Britishers are still here. Now, bache, something very unexpected happens at that time. Now, Bengal, and that in Bengal. And so many people died that it is one of the worst things that has happened in the history of India. But as we know, the government responsible was not really taking care or bothered or concerned about the lives of humans at that time of India, right? So it happened in Bengal, which led to death of around 30 lakh people. French Revolution में ये नहीं हुआ ना? आप समझ रहे हो? You have to understand the difference. French Revolution में people were not dying because there was no food. There was food, it was just not affordable for them, so they had to snatch it away from the people who were selling it. And the government was responsible again. So 30 lakh people died because of shortage of food. There was no food for them. And just in one area of Bengal, it's not around the country it's happening, right? Just in that one area, 30 lakh people died, which is a very, very big number. It was unprecedented, which means it was not seen. Something like this was not witnessed or seen before. In its severity, it was so severe, it was so bad, so adverse that it was not witnessed by people before, and because of the learning that it gave to us, India has been so conscious about it ever since that we have not gone to a level where it could have been replicated again. फिर से ऐसी नौबत आए, वहां तक हमने बात पहुंचने ही नहीं दी, हमने इतनी तैयारी करके रखी उसके बाद से, right? So if you talk about this, the agricultural laborers, fishermen, transport workers and other casual laborers were the worst sufferers. So guys, if you remember, we have been talking about the vulnerable sections. आपको याद होगा? हम सोसाइटी के वल्नरेबल सेक्शंस के बारे में हमेशा से बात करते आए और इसमें हम हमेशा से ये बोलते आए हैं दैट दीज आर द पीपल हु आर पुअर, दीज आर द पीपल हु कम फ्रॉम अ सोशल बैकग्राउंड वेयर दे फेस discrimination, right? And for all of these reasons, they are more exposed to the risk. So even at this time when the problem happened, because of their financial condition, because of their social condition, they were the worst hit. They took the worst hit of this situation. Okay? They died the most out of those 30 lakh people who passed away. सबसे ज़्यादा कौन से ग्रुप से थे? इन ग्रुप से थे, इन सारे लोगों के ग्रुप से थे. करंट सिनेरियो क्या है? Despite no similar events, conditions like that have still occurred on and off in some or the other places in various parts of the country where starvation, where deaths have happened because of the starvation of people, because of the shortage of food, right? So because of that, need for food security again becomes very important. I don't know why security is written everywhere. It will be security, okay? The existence of famine-like conditions happen because of multiple reasons. जैसे COVID के time पे, right? COVID के time पे no food production, even if food production happened, ठीक है, it was not possible to reach to us because of transportation issues, because of different issues, right? ठीक है? Natural calamities, disaster, Assam में, West Bengal, Odisha, these are the places very prone to cyclones. A lot of things like that, like Kedarnath के पास जैसे the cloud burst happened. In such situations, a huge chunk of people get caught where there is no food available, right? So COVID-19 हमने देखा है कि food security को कैसे affect किया है, restrictions of movement की वजह से, economic activities की वजह से, and that helps us understand the necessity of food security, how important it is to have a continuous access to food even during crises like pandemics. In situations maybe affordability, availability and accessibility has to be ensured so that we do not lose lives of our citizens at all. So guys, let's quickly wind up this session with this last quiz question. इस आखिरी question के साथ हम session wind up करेंगे. Who were the people who were the worst hit sufferers of Bengal famine? इस famine की वजह से किन लोगों को सबसे ज़्यादा problem हुई थी? Agricultural laborers, fishermen, transport workers or all of the above? Who were the people who were the worst sufferers of the Bengal famine? The agricultural laborers, the fishermen, or the transport workers, or all of the above? Okay, and I see we have already got the answers. Tushant Nagaraj, absolutely correct. Perfect timing. Shrivalli Radhika, amazing, you guys. Anjali, Maniraj, Rhythm, Sai, Tanmay, MR, and Tonmoy have also answered correctly, and that too very fast. Yashashwini has taken an attempt. Yashashwini, I think you just clicked one. Drushti, bache, all of these are correct. All of them were from the vulnerable section and got hit by this, right? Chalo. So summarize kar lete hain. Let's quickly summarize what we have just done. Food security is basically ensuring consistent access, affordability and availability of food for all, economic and physical availability, right? It encompasses three crucial dimensions: availability, accessibility and affordability of nutritious, safe, secure food. It is vital as both the impoverished, who do not have the provision, and those above the poverty lines face insecurity during disasters like pandemic, calamities like droughts, diminish food production, right? Droughts, floods, usse food production gets affected, which leads to shortages and inflate of food, and it inflates the price. It raises the prices, which impacts the ability of people to buy food. In such crisis can lead to starvation, where it can result to extreme scarcity of food, right? And challenges persists as famine-like conditions endure in parts of India due to calamities and events like COVID-19 pandemic, emphasizing the need for continuous access of food during such crisis. So guys, because we have already passed the time, I will quickly close. As India continues to grapple with challenges, we're still struggling with food security. We're trying to ensure that we have proper systems, but there's obviously a struggle over there, right? Okay? A glimmer of hope emerges with the National Food Security Act of 2013. 2013 की वजह से. So with this landmark legislation and law, be the key to ensuring access to sufficient and nutritious food to all citizens. In the next session, we will find out who are the people who are insecure and how do we make sure that they have access to food. So let me quickly say bye to all of you. Please make sure you guys that you are registered for the upcoming session, which is tomorrow at 6 PM. 6 बजे ही है हमारा. तो आप ज़रूर से register कर लेना. Students watching on YouTube, do not forget to like, share, subscribe to the channel so that whenever the session is there, you do get a notification. और Embibe Lens check out कर लेना. और please do not forget to join the channel. Very important to join the channel. ना channel ज़रूर join कर लीजिएगा. ये QR code है, ये link है. Now Yashashwini, I'm so sorry. Tomorrow I'll answer your question. I didn't read the private chat because I had ended the session. तो कल मिलती हूँ मैं आपसे. कल आप question पूछ लेना session में, ठीक है? So I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a great evening, you guys. Have a good night. Take care of yourself. Stay tuned and keep imbibing.
Keep imbibing. We believe in you.